2 rounds down, 6 left to go here in the GT Sprint Challenge here on RCI Fridays. Hello, everybody, and welcome in to what is a very wet Hungaroring here in Hungary. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Tim Peck and Kevin Boss, back with you for round number 3 of the longest Friday champ in the last several years. Tim Peck, Kevin, welcome in. We'll start with Tim. This racetrack always interesting in RCI competition, and it always seems to have those grandstand finishes. What's the rain going to play into that today?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting, Jesse. I certainly think sticking with how Hungaroring usually goes with RCI, I think we're definitely in for an interesting race here. However, the rain does make things more difficult. For example, the chicane that we're coming up to right now on your screens, that's going to be quite difficult to navigate in the rain, especially if you're around a lot of cars. And the following ones that we're about to see again, it's all going to get quite tight, and the cars are going to have to be super careful out on track to make sure they don't go into each other. But I still think we're in for a really interesting race, and the rain can only shake things up more, in my opinion.
Couldn't agree more with that statement. We go down to Kevin Boss. Nobody on this commentary crew more familiar with this racetrack today. What are some of the trouble issues around this particular racetrack? What are some of the places you can make some passes to, Kevin? I need the info.
Well, I'd say the biggest point will be turn 1, as it's after the long straight, and with also, just like Imola last week, it's a very tight track, and especially in Sector 2, Sector 3, with all the tight and twisty corners, very difficult to overtake. Maybe if someone makes a mistake, but I'd say the main overtaking point will be turn 1.
There you have it. Turn 1 could be a big issue. Well, we had some folks in chat. Michael was asking what the weather was looking like. It was doing a rain dance for split number 1. Of course, this is the pro split after all, and it has been a damp practice session. Time will only tell what will happen here when we switch over to qualifying. And well, there you have it, and you see the results. It is still very wet. That is going to change sort of the setup, the dynamic, and everything. And oh, by the way, we've only got about 10 minutes here of qualifying to get it done, Tim.
Yeah, we only have 10-minute qualifying sessions here on a Friday. With the rain and the length of this track, you're probably not going to get a lot of chances at getting your best lap in as well. And that's the other thing. With the rain, Jesse, obviously, you're more likely to make a mistake on a corner. Maybe you're a bit of understeer, a bit of oversteer if you're playing it safe or a bit reckless. Also, you could find yourself missing your braking marker. You've got to adjust all of these things in the rain as well. So what you need to see from a lot of these drivers is just adapting to this rain as quickly as possible, because you're probably only getting 4 laps to set your fastest lap here, and if you miss 1 or 2 of them, then you're getting a lot of pressure to set a quick time as well. And as we've seen in the previous weeks, it can come down to that final lap. We've even seen some of the drivers who we expect to see at the front start towards the back of the grid as well, so we're hoping to avoid that today, especially since we're into that third race now. A lot of the drivers have used that drop round, and they're going to want to make sure that today is a great result for them.
Of course, we haven't even really talked about the championship as a whole. There are a ton of ties. The entire top 8 are paired off with at least one other driver. We'll show you that at the conclusion of qualifying today as well. And a couple of other notes about the Hungaroring that you may or may not know, and one that you might find quite interesting to find out. You can invalidate your lap quite easily around a couple of corners. You take 1 too many bites of the cherry, it can evaporate in a hurry, and maybe not wanting to do that today. Track's not completely wet. We've not lost it yet. It's just damp. So times are going to be just a little bit quicker than if it was fully wet. It was exactly like this in practice, so at least the drivers have an idea of what to expect. Kevin, always being the first car out there, very treacherous. Savalainen always likes to be the first car out, and he's going to set the tone for everybody here, I think.
Well, definitely, especially because he has no one in front of him, and he's got no one who can make a mistake in front of him. So he's got all the free space, open air, and yeah, the track to himself, basically. If anyone behind him makes a mistake, that's going to be a trouble for everyone else behind them.
Well, I'll ask you this. Would you rather be the first car out or the last car out in these?
Well, like I just said, in this situation, I prefer to be first, even though it might take away a bit of the wet patches on the track if you go a bit later. But the chance that someone makes a mistake is a lot higher in the rain. So being first gives you that little bit of extra security to be able to do your own thing.
See, Tim, this is why we have Kevin. He's able to provide the intel that we can only argue about in theory. Well, I tell you what, in 10 minutes, the rain is going to stop. It's a very light rain, just enough to keep the track damp. Very warm, too. I would assume humid, 27 degrees C as well. No real wind to speak of around the racing circuit. Also, Tim, you can't rule out the fact that even though it is still raining, maybe the track will improve here because it's raining so very lightly.
Well, that's the other thing that we haven't really talked about in detail here, but with 10 minutes of qualifying, of course, the rain is variable, so that's going to change all the way throughout qualifying as well, which is why I have to agree with Kevin. I want to be the first driver out on track here. I want to be doing what Junior Salvoline is doing. I want to be basically taking as much quality as I can, because you don't know, but the rain could have got heavier after 10 minutes. It could have got lighter. And as we can see, the rain is going to clear up after 10 minutes. So it's looking like times are going to get quicker as the session progresses. Salvoline crosses the line with a 150.1, and you can see some other drivers now just setting some times that tend to be a little bit slower at the moment. But that's the thing, Jesse. Across the session, these times are going to change. There's going to be wetter parts of the track. The rains might get heavier, it might get lighter at points. So really, with wet qualifying, you just want to be out on track as much as possible, setting as many laps as you can, because it could turn out that the first lap you do is the quickest. It could turn out that the last lap you do is going to be the quickest. It's all about when those ideal conditions come in.
Just in case anybody's wondering, I'm the odd man out. I would have wanted to be the last car out on the track, but nobody else disagrees with me in the booth. Very interesting that Savalainen quickest so far, a 50.102, proving you two might be correct. Jardier, who's back with us for round number 3, wasn't with us 1 week ago. We expected to miss several races this season. Is back here today and is already P2, about 2/10 off. He shares that duty with the likes of Samir Foch now, and Borgosman goes to the top of 49.870 for the Borg's 240 McLaren. That was an excellent lap. Samir Foch goes P2, 2/10 off of that pace. That backs Savalainen, Jardier, and Hugo Merrill's back 1 spot apiece, all the way back to the top 5. Bazak in 6th place in that Honda. Also Harley Chamberlain right behind them as well. Feel like a broken record sometimes. Said this last week, I'll say it again. Hondas go well here, showing up here. 2 of them inside the top 10.
Yeah, and the Hondas have done really well across this championship too as a whole. I'm just looking at some of the deltas of these drivers that are currently still on track right now, Jesse, and it seems to be echoing what I was saying just a minute ago, that actually a lot of them are improving as the rain gets lighter. The majority of the deltas are improving as well, and by quite significant margins too. So what I expect to see for the rest of this qualifying is what we're already seeing. Chamberlain coming in with a 149.3, but I expect it's just going to be like this every single time someone sets a new lap. I reckon they'll be pushed right up to the top. As the rain gets lighter, the track times are going to get a lot faster out there, and I think it could be one of those cases where in qualifying, whoever crosses the line last maybe going to be in for getting the best lap. We saw it last season with George Boothby. They were the one that crossed the line last. They had the best lap time in, and that could go to what you were saying, which is you want to be the last person out on track because you're more likely to cross the line last here. But I think that's what it's going to come down to today, is who crosses that line last.
I think it's very interesting what I just saw there. Harley Chamberlain for the Jardier community team went quickest of all, a 49.387 in that Honda. Kopsov up to P2 in a Honda as well, that 121, 2/10 off. Everybody realistically in the top 5 outside of Kopsov into the pit lane. Are they reloading for one more shot at pole position here, Kevin?
They might be waiting for the track to dry up a little bit more, but I don't think there's enough time for that. What they might be aiming for is to have a bit more of clear track ahead of them instead of being in the pack. Like the guys now going towards the chicane, it's a big group, and you basically want more of a free and open space in front of you.
Very interesting to see where they come out as well. Obviously, you don't want to catch traffic. There's still a lot of cars, I'd say the majority of cars, still out there on the track. Work to do if you're Savalainen after a devastating disconnect 1 week ago at the track that has beaten him down more than any other in ACC competition. He's back this week at a track that he's about 50% win to loss ratio here. That's pretty good. I'll take that every day of the week. And Hugo Merrill's also trying to stay in this championship fight as well. Do a little bit better than 7th realistically. Stazak up to P8 with that lap. Samir Foch all the way down, who was 2nd place a moment ago, all the way down in 10th. Tim, that tells me this track is indeed improving.
Yeah, and I was watching all the people that went back into the pits. They've now all of them have actually come out. I'm wondering if maybe they were sizing each other up a bit, thinking, can we get the timing on this perfect so that we're the last ones to cross the line? That's the other thing you have to be a bit concerned about here is you can't just leave it till the last minute, even if you know how long your outlap is going to take. You can't just go, okay, I'll do that outlap and then be the last to cross the line, because if someone comes out in front of you, Jesse, and they do an outlap slightly slower than you, there could be a hold up which sees that maybe one of you doesn't cross the line in time. Jardier here about to cross the line. They are massive improvement on their previous lap. This will be enough to take them up into pole position if they continue, and it is. There you go, another provisional pole, a 1:49.2 from Jardier. And I think, again, Jesse, this is what we're going to be seeing here is who crosses the line last. We've had a couple of different provisional pole sitters in the last 3 minutes out on track, and I just think it's going to continue way until the end of quali.
Harley Chamberlain, the odd man out. I don't know if that was by design or they mistimed their box entry, but they are out of qualifying. They will do no better than P2. They have nothing left for it, and Jan Klimes in the 329 Porsche has also brought that car down to pit lane. Those are the only two cars realistically in the entire grid that have went to the pit lane. One of the cars, it was one of the 400 numbered cars, has had an issue coming up to the penultimate hairpin. I think that's the 404 by Grande, who's had an issue. A lot of nervous race cars out there, Kevin, really. A lot of busy hand movement. Is that atypical of this racetrack, or is that the weather playing into that?
It's a bit of a combination of both, because it's very easy to go into the throttle just a little bit too early and then get that little bit of oversteer, but the rain is definitely not helping in that regard. Then even the slightest throttle movement can already make your rear end a little twitchy.
It definitely, you can see it in the steering wheel, folks, and it's very impressive the way that they make those tiny micro adjustments. That was an improvement for Savalainen, but unfortunately just a 49.910, good enough for 8th place. But also, I believe they made it to the line before the clock struck 0, so Cinderella is going to get another lap right here, one more shot to take a top 5 spot at least, looking to recover for 1 week ago. They've basically, like Tim, like you said, Savalainen has already used up their one drop round this season by virtue of getting 0 points last week.
They have, and actually, just to sort of change the subject here, Jesse, going back on what I was saying about being the last one to cross the line, I don't think that was the call here, actually. Looking at a lot of the deltas on these drivers right now, it seems that this final lap is going to be slower, and the rain is maybe just that little bit more. So I think maybe the drivers that are in the pits already, Jardier, Chamberlain, and a couple of others have returned to the pits as well down the board. You can see, I think that those were the last laps that you were getting in, because anyone left out on track right now isn't really improving on their time at all. But yeah, Savalainen will be looking to get a better start this week. Of course, they're not going to manage that. 8th place is going to be where Savalainen starts. They ideally want to be fighting a lot further up the field, so they're going to be climbing throughout the race here. Samir Foch almost making contact with another driver there. Someone goes off the track and grip doesn't hold their brakes either, but Foch going to see if they can improve on their time. It looks like they're not going to be able to. They're right on their delta. It's 0-0-0-0. But either way, Jesse, going back to what you were saying, Savalainen here was probably wishing for a better start today. That being said, Valentin Barrier also not starting on that front row either. So a couple of drivers here probably hoping for a bit more out of qualifying today.
Well, it's always a mixed bag in wet weather qualifying of what you may get. What we have today is Jardier on pole for the first time this season, for the first time in recent memory, mind you, as well. 149.257, good enough for pole position today on a wet Hungaroring. Second place, sharing front row duties. Harley Chamberlain was one of the first cars to return to pit road, but will outlast everyone else. Take a front row starting spot. Barrier, Kopsov, Bosch, Horsey, Borgosman, Savalainen, Faiskas, and Hugo Merrill's the top 10. A lot of drivers in odd positions, and with the championship points absolutely deadlocked, is going to be quite an interesting prospect. And just look at those purple sector times, non-committal with who's the quickest in every sector.
Yeah, you can see Begosman all the way down in 7th there, has the fastest third sector, and by quite a significant margin as well. It all goes back to what I was saying, Jesse, in that the rain being variable, it's going to affect those lap times and who can put out the fastest lap time. But I think this is an interesting start. Jardier coming back for their first week after their break. They're on pole. I think they're going to be quite excited for what this race can do. And I see a lot of drivers here who maybe are fighting in the front of the championship, but not at the front of this race. They're going to want to be improving their race result today.
Well, we've talked a lot about the championship, and here is as simple as we can make it. This does, of course, factor in the drop round. Every driver gets one drop round. Your worst finish out of the entire 8-race season gets dropped. And after 2 rounds, we have a ton of ties. Valentin Berrier on top of Jonas Savalainen, though they are both tied for first place. But based on countback at this point, Berrier would have a better second finish. That's why he's at the top. But for all intents and purposes, they are tied for first. A tie for third, Konstantin Soldatov and Jaroslav Hanzik, 58 points apiece there. And then it doesn't get any better. Tie for fifth place, Samir Foch and Thomas with 53 apiece. And, well, guess what? Another tie for seventh place. Harley Chamberlain and Glib with 48 points apiece. And finally, a little bit of a reprieve from all the ties. Hugo Merrils holds sole custody of P9, 40 points for him, and Grande with 37 points rounds out your top 10. A lot can still happen, and some of those drivers, of course, have not had a drop round yet.
Well, if you thought that Grande had 10th place down, you'd be wrong. They are currently tied with Horchi, who also has 37 points. Tied for 12 as well, Begosman and Barnett, both on 34. Christian Bock is the sole person in 14th, 28 points. Giorgio Migazi and Dixon Chen, both with 25 points, will be tied for 15th. Podeman in 17th has 23 points. Races in 18th, and then Simon and FazeCast both tied for 19th place with 19 points.
You know, normally I would say at this particular stage, don't worry, all this will untie itself after today, but I don't think it will. I think it will just create more ties going forward. Outside the top 20, work to do from this point on. Dan Klimes tied with Alex Kopsov with 17 points apiece. Kopsov had a fantastic qualifying here a moment ago as well. 23rd, Orns with 15 points, a tie for 24th. Durant and Statsak with the tie for that position. Behind them, Lele 1 point over Timo Friev with 12, but they're tied with Jordan Daly themselves for 27th place. Scarmato with 11 points, 1 point behind all of them, and rounding out your top 30, just 1 point behind again, Donna Razor.
Martin Lindrop has 8 points there in 31st. Salenskas has 7 points there in 32nd. Anyone with a 0 next to their name is still in this championship. They just have yet to score points. Anyone with a hyphen next to their name has dropped out of the championship. So the people still in the championship are Pushkarov, Gareth Fulan, and Herman Frey. They're still in this championship, but anyone else has now signed out fully.
Well, that's a lot of ties, and for all intensive purposes, that has to be an RCI record for the most amount of ties after a couple of rounds. Yes, it's helped by the drop round, but even still, having 12 different ties inside the top 35 or whatever that we have in this championship, that is just about incredible, even with the drop round being applied. That does imply that if you had a really good first round, you had a equally terrible second round, while the equally bad first round, you had a fantastic second round. It is incredible. All that's going to change today, though, but I'm unsure in whose favor. We've got some of the big title contenders back in the field, Kevin, and, well, they've got to make their way to the front. How do you do that around this racetrack?
Well, like I said before, during qualifying, like the main overtaking point is going to be turn 1, especially now that we can see it's starting in the dry and then moving to the wet. What's going to be most important is timing that place where you're going to switch over to the wet tires, not to lose too much, but still, well, getting damp and then sliding too much on the slicks, and also not going too early, overheating your wet tires, and then losing grip when you actually need.
I think that this track has lovely overtaking opportunities if you're bold enough. I will tell you, one of such places that isn't an overtaking opportunity, the chicane on the backside of the racetrack. That is a dangerous proposition to be playing at. Somebody will try it. It will go wrong. And Rather unfortunately, they will catch the ire of our fantastic live stewards who are with us today, as always, on Friday. A welcome in to them and a welcome in to all of you at home as well, spending a little bit of your Friday evening with us. We thank you for being with us. We invite you to like, subscribe, do all the things. Don't want to miss a race. Of course, we'll be back with you tomorrow night for continued coverage of the Night Owl Championship. General reminder as well, you can join any season here at RCI, already in progress, by going to racerci.com, signing up, do your pre-quali during the week, run that week's race. We could see you next week here, round 4 of the Sprint Challenge or any of our other fantastic series. The GT4 mixed class with the Cup cars on Thursday, Night Owl, of course, and the Janetta Championship all going. Actually, the Janetta Championship still in the pre-quali phase. You can make one of that in the 1.5 weeks time. With all that said, it's going to be a hectic start. It always is here, Tim. Land rush style start down into turn 1, 4 or 5 wide. That sound about right to you?
Oh, 100%. Starting here at the Hungaroring is always complete chaos. It's quite a wide start-finish straight compared to the rest of the track. So whilst you can be 4 or 5 wide going down into that turn 1, especially coming out turn 1 as well, it's going to get quite thin quite quickly. So drivers are going to need to be able to sort themselves out before you get down into turn 2 and 3, especially leading into turn 4 as well, because that's when the track gets to its thinnest points as well in that start, in the first sector there. So drivers don't have a lot of time to sort themselves out, and I do expect there'll be a big fight down into turn 1. Now, the thing I find interesting here, Jesse, is that Chardier lining up on pole. You've got Chamberlain lining up in second. Neither of them are in contention right now. Neither of them are tied right now for that first place in the championship. That goes to Barrier and Salvalainen, neither of which find themselves on the 3rd row here. However, I do think that's going to be one of those things that's going to make this championship more interesting. Of course, got a lot of ties throughout the championship. Will it sort itself out today? Probably not, especially with the drivers that you see right now in that top 10. I think it's going to be even more mix-ups as well, and definitely a dive for turn 1.
Well, qualifying was done on a Saturday. It was rainy and a bit dreary, but not over wet, I would argue. Well, today we have been blessed with a little bit of intermittent sunshine. That will go away halfway into this race. This track, very green, very hot too. 31 degrees C, just a light breeze there. 30 minutes time, everybody knows that it's going to rain. You would imagine there would be a tire change at some point to put the wet grooved Pirellis on the cars. When that move happens, might be a winning or losing proposition. 30 cars getting ready to go green, and here we are, green for round number 3 of the GT Sprint Challenge. Borgosman has a drive-through penalty immediately ACC assigned for being out of position on the start. We're 3 wide, make it 4 wide. Down into turn number 1, almost everybody gets away from it cleanly. I spoke too soon, exiting one, a couple of cars around. One more goes clanging off into the barrier. A couple of cars now off into the background. The 114 involved heavily in a big accident with the 42 as well. But mostly everybody able to get it sorted down to single file.
Chamberlain has been absolutely swallowed up at the beginning there, because I believe that is Valentin Barrier now in that 2nd place slot. Chardier, though, was off to a great start, managed to hold it on the inside, and they're going to continue to hold that first place position as well. But Jesse, you can see as they went for that first corner, so many cars were grouped up in 3s and 4s. Now they've all had to sort themselves out into almost single file as we continue now into Sector 2. We're in the middle of Sector 2 here, and you can see the corners, the track, it's all got a lot tighter than it was before, so cars have had to sort it out. But there you go on the screen. This is the order as it stands after the first couple of turns. Chardier remains in 1st place, Barrier up into 2nd, Chamberlain falls down to 3rd, and Salvalainen manages to find themselves up in 6th place. And Hugo Morales, who I believe started 10th, is now up in 7th as well. So a good start for a lot of drivers who are hoping to climb in today's race.
Porsche has had a big issue here. This was after a initial accident as well. The 43, and you saw the GTR, who some of you in chat have already noted was involved in that accident. The 114, the 43, and the 404 all involved in turn 1, the exit of turn 1 at that incident. Borgosman in the 240. I don't know exactly what happened. They started 7th. They got a drive-through penalty for being out of position, but something else must have went wrong, as they have dropped all the way down to outside the top 20. They'll now come in to serve. That drive-through penalty for being out of position on the start, and automatically, immediately, the stewards have a little bit of a headache. Valentin Berrier, by the way, wasting no time, getting up into P2, making that pass on Harley Chamberlain in the Honda. Just a replay here. They're going to go 4 wide. I saw a couple of cars go off the racetrack. That's sort of where it starts. You see the Aston go off there. And actually, no, the accident, the first accident was already happening by the time that second accident, all Constantine together.
Oh, no!
Hugo Merrill's! It's a big crash for Hugo Merrill's. What on earth? Oh, it's a self-spin on a green racetrack in an unloaded corner. You hate to see that. Hugo goes headfirst into the barrier with that Ferrari.
Oh, and Hugo and Morales, they're going to be kicking themselves because, again, this is another incident that's not caused by several drivers. It's just going to be one of those accidents that's happened. But Morales, they're going to be kicking themselves for that there, because that is going to be a very big setback in today's race. They're yet again going to have to be climbing through the field. Someone who's not having to be climbing through the field is Valentin Berrier. They're going to have to hold off Harley Chamberlain, though. And I just want to go back to what happened between these two on the first couple of corners there, Jesse. Chamberlain, you'd be interested to know, was actually alongside. However, going towards turn 2 and turn 3, Chamberlain just gets swallowed up by Barrier because they couldn't find a way through that first corner. Jardier held the inside line and Barrier then followed through as well, and Chamberlain just gets swallowed up in the process.
Yeah, I just want to go to Kevin really quickly. We saw Hugo spin. They were on the curb, but the curb wasn't wet. The track's green. They were right up behind somebody. Realistically, could that be aero wash? Was that something to do with the setup? What caused that?
Well, it could be a couple of things. It could be the aero wash. It could also be trying to accelerate on the curb. The green track, a combination of everything. I think he maybe smelled a bit of opportunity to get forward, pushed a bit too much, and then because of that, he might have lost that rear.
Yeah, it looked very strange. You don't normally see incidents like that that happen all by themselves. But again, another huge setback for Hugo Merrill's, a driver who came in as maybe the championship favorite, has already won one of these series and was looking really good coming in, but it's had absolutely no luck. They finished 9th and 6th, and rather unfortunate. I know some of you at home are like, Jesse, that sounds pretty good. I'd love to finish 9th and 6th. But realistically, if you're fighting for a championship, that's not good enough, Tim Penn.
Yeah, if you're fighting for the championship, you need to be up there at the front, especially in Salvolinen's case. They're currently in 6th. They do have the fastest lap, which is great news for them. But Valentin Berrier, who is their championship rival, they're tied first place points with 72 points right now. Valentin Berrier finds himself in 2nd place, and that is just that is the much better place to be in right now. And actually, as I say that, Valentin Berrier finds their way up into 1st, managing to overtake Jardier. So Salvolinen, if they want to be in this championship, if they want to continue fighting, they need to climb a lot faster. Valentin Berrier, though, leads this race. Jardier falls into 2nd, and Chamberlain remains in that 3rd place podium position.
I'll tell you what's really sneaky about Harley Chamberlain. They're in this championship competition. They got 48 points, and no, that isn't the equal mark of 72 for the top runners. But keep in mind, with the drop round and all of that, that points total is going to likely equalize, especially if they can continue these good runs. This will be a 3rd good run in a row for Harley Chamberlain. And yes, they dropped that 1 spot off the start, but they're not falling off the back in front, to quite to the contrary, on the back of Jardier to get back that P2 spot with Berrier out front. But again, Berrier, I was quite curious after that excellent round in Italy 1 week ago, could they keep up this momentum, this pressure in the big Bentley? And even they, when we interviewed them, did not sound like they were 100% confident the Bentley had it in it. But realistically, though, on the racetrack, absolutely flying here.
Yeah, Valentin Berrier continues to absolutely fly through the track. They've made it look like the Bentley is the car to pick right now. And as we heard from them last week, Jesse, they want to make the Bentley look that way because they feel like it's been a bit underloved in the last couple of seasons. But Valentin Berrier, I mean, they've had an amazing last couple of races, managing to push themselves back up into that 1st place in the championship as well. And even looking back into last season, just had such a great season too. But Salvolinenen, definitely not one you can discount just yet. They were holding that fastest lap for a little bit. They no longer are, but you can see right over the back of this Honda already. They have so much pace here at the Hungaroring, and I expect to see them continue to fight through the field, albeit they need to do it quickly, because it would not surprise me if Berrier now just disappears off into the distance.
Yeah, it is a case of you have to react, and normally you as a racing driver you're told not to react. Don't react too much and run your race. But this might be a case of you have to do something or you might lose contact. And he's trying to go around the outside here. Is Harley Chamberlain? This is the Jardier community team racing against Jardier himself. Very interesting. We've interviewed both Jardier and the community team on several occasions in the past. There's no team orders between these two, between the community team and Jardier. They race each other respectfully, but also very hard. So if Harley Chamberlain can get up there and get past him, get beside him, force an air, that's exactly what Chamberlain is going to do. It is a very respectful fight. We've seen it play out several times here in RCI before. You've seen it here again today. But how big could this be for Chamberlain for the championship? Getting by Jardier, maybe getting back into the fight with Berrier as well. Samir Foch, another car that is sneakily always in and around the top 5. He did that last week as well, up high in the championship points. Has been very quiet this season, hasn't made a lot of noise. Got a boatload of points.
Well, you can see here's something happening to Jordan Daly. Let's have a look. Oh, there's contact with the other car, spinning them out. The stewards are going to have some work to do there, especially also with everything that happened into turn 1. Who knows what happens to Daly, but that's definitely going to hurt his chances today.
Yeah, it's very strange, Savalainen, not exactly where you would expect them to be, but isn't it important in this case not to panic, especially you're back in P6, you're not too far away from the leaders, just a couple of seconds. You obviously know you have pace. Savalainen's won RCI races here in this format before. You know the weather's coming. If you were Savalainen's coach here or crew chief, what would you be telling him?
Well, especially just to keep it easy after the disconnect from last week. That's already his drop round. He doesn't want to do anything stupid, especially with the rain that's about to hit in about 10 minutes. So for me, if he can keep close to all the guys ahead, I've also seen, Barrier attack in the second to last corner. So that's opened up another attacking opportunity to overtake. But yeah, for me, it's at this point, especially with the rain coming, just wait for people to make mistakes. If you see an opportunity, do get it, but try and keep it safe.
Chamberlain again trying through turns 1 and 2, trying to go the long way around, maybe catch Jardier out, nothing doing. Chamberlain still in third place. Samir Foch has caught this group up into P4 now. Kopsov also involved here. Savalainen in the background as well in the red AMG. And if they don't figure this out quickly, and I don't think they will do, Basekis in the 95 Honda is about to join them, and they're bringing Statzik with them. This entire top 10, Les, Valentin, Berrier are all coming back together again. Savalainen, though, looks racy here, looking like he's going to make a move here.
Oh, they're really fighting it around the outside. Is Savalainen still there as well? They're neck and neck going into the next corner. Savalainen has an advantage. Goes a bit deeper into the corner. That'll push them ahead of the Honda. Going a little bit wide out of the corner, almost like they're entering the pit lane, but will manage to keep it together. And it looks like that Mercedes now is just going to pull away as they go into the straight. They can turn their attention towards Samir Foch in the Ferrari as well. Happening further up the field, Chamberlain now looking towards the inside of Jardier, going into turn 1. Not quite close enough though, but will pull them right towards the rear of the Ferrari of Jardier there. Chamberlain, they've looked, although they got swallowed up in turn 1, Jesse, they have looked very, very feisty so far for the rest of this race.
I tell you what, though, Tim, I really did think that they were going to fall back. It looked like maybe they had set up their car for the second half of the race, knowing that the rain was coming, and oh boy, is it coming. In 10 minutes, we know we're going to get rainfall, and in another 20, 30 minutes, it's going to get worse before the checkered flag falls here today. It is going to turn into a deluge by the end of this one. You hope, I would hope at least, everyone has put on a sort of mixed setup. You can't rule out the fact that some people saw the rain coming and went to a full wet setup. I would argue, though, most people probably have a hybrid of the two just to be safe. But I don't know. This is going to be incredible. This is just the dry portion of the race. If I was anybody in this race right now, I'd probably be saying get everything you can right now, because the future is absolutely uncertain. They're certainly driving like that's the case as well.
Yeah, this is a dry part of the race. It's obviously the safest part of the race as well to be doing the most racing, the most overtakes. You don't have the wet weather to worry about. Wet weather always makes things a bit more unpredictable as well. So in terms of making the moves happen, this is when you really need to be looking to do it because things become a lot more unpredictable later on. But Jesse, this is my favorite sort of race. When you have rain hit right in the middle, you've known it's going to be coming as well. So most drivers will have fueled up to get them this part of the race. However, what it comes down to now is making sure you hit in that perfect sweet spot. You want to make it so that your tyres are optimum for both sides of the pit. So you want to be pitting just as the dry tyres are going out and the wet tyres are coming into that optimum spot. And I've got to say, this is what I love to see because it's almost a game of chicken now. Who's going to pit first and are they going to pit the correct time?
Now that's quite interesting because we're about to go 3 wide here. Scarmato's thinking about making it so, but they won't get to that before they get through turn number 2. They all sort it out, and by sort it out, I'm using that as a vague term, of course, as they've definitely not settled anything as of yet. Still looking very racy indeed. Flashing of the lights, the gamesmanship going on. The Lamborghini of Simon apparently slowing up Scarmato. Scarmato would very much like to go by, takes a swing there, has to back out, that'll lose him a position. Orts will get by him in the number 30 AMG. That'll be a position lost by Scarmato, further frustrating the driver, and the rain has arrived. Speaking of that, strategically speaking, Kevin, do you really want to be the first in this condition? Are you going to try and go as long as possible? What's the strategy?
I think with the rain just hitting, the track is still good, even though it will get a bit slippery. Looking at the front of the pack, like Barrier, Jardier, Chamberlain, Foch, I think they'll go at least another lap. The drivers behind who might want to try and take a gamble to get further forward might just try and get into the pits now and hope that gamble works out.
Well, you know what it's going to do? It is going to pour absolute buckets. Is it worth a tire deg on the tread-blocked Pirellis? To do that is the risk versus reward. Konstantin Soldatov seems to agree that it's absolutely worth it, as they have gone in immediately as the track has went almost instantly to greasy. This is not a light rain, folks. I mean, it technically is, but it is going to start pouring here rather sooner than later, and it's going to do that for the rest of the race. Quite interesting. Some of the drivers with the windscreen wiper on, some with it not on. Of course, well, there you go. I was going to comment on Harley Chamberlain not having wiper on, but now it has gone on. Obstruction on the windscreen probably got too much for them. Rain has started to come down even more. The worst thing you want to do is get stuck out there somewhere where it starts to come down incredibly hard, but only the 2 drivers in, the 911 and I believe that's the 966 is also in the pit lane. The only 2 to come down immediately, that is Simon, but everybody else has stayed out. Now, I suspect they will do for a little bit, Tim.
Absolutely, and this goes back to exactly what I'm saying, that this is the exciting part of the race. There's some people in chat, ACC manager says there is rain, things will become interesting. Now this is, in my opinion, Jesse, the most interesting part of the race because it is just a game of chicken. Who's going to come in first to pit? But even then, if they come in first, have they pitted at the right time? To make sure you find that sweet spot, and the person who is under the most pressure, in my opinion, to do that right now is Juna Salvalainen. They have 1.7 seconds before they reach Tamir Foch, but not just that, they are fighting Valentin Barrier, who has a 3-second gap to Jardier behind. Salvalainen right now, a lot of pressure on them to get this pit stop perfect so they can get back into a fight with Barrier up ahead.
Saw Pushkarev come into the pit lane. Several other cars have decided now is the correct time to do that. Several more still have elected to continue to go around. I think one of the most recent metas for wet weather driving is to drive it right up until the point where you can't stand it anymore on the slick Pirellis and then change it. But we also have seen the reverse of that work, especially in sudden downpours. Well, it has been a very fantastic race from a racing standpoint early on. A lot of side-by-side action, but it hasn't all gone to plan. Several incidents have been reviewed and a couple of penalties handed out. First of all, racing incident between the 420, the 43, and the 100. That was the initial incident on the start we saw. Racing incident between the 240 and the 43. That was the other initial incident at the start of the race. No further action between the 966 and the 114. A 5-second penalty for car 5 for pushing car 11 off the track. Lap 1, turn 4, 5-second penalty for car 92 for overtaking off track. You don't see that very often. That on lap 1, turn 8. Drive-through penalty for car 197. That's Jordan Daly's car for oversteering into the 404, taking them out on lap 1, turn 3. 5-second penalty for car 30 for avoidable contact, resulting in a forceful overtake. That against car 34. That on lap 5. And a racing incident between the 92 and the 966. The 966 and the 92, two separate incidents, mind you, on 2 different laps, and a racing incident between the 92 and the 34. That's all we got right now, but a couple of argy-bargy incidents there.
A couple of argy-bargy incidents indeed. The first of the front runners in the top 10 to come into the pits is Starzak. They're coming in right now to serve their pit stop for the race. They'll be putting on the wet tyres as well. We've got a race replay here from Giorgio Migazi. They make contact as they come around the inside of that corner there. You can just see they shake the car up a little bit on the outside. Nothing too drastic though, which here's the thing, Jesse, is you've got wet weather. A lot of these drivers as well that are pitting are going to be pitting for safety now because they feel like this is the point where they cannot get the most performance out of that dry tyre. But the drivers up ahead like Valentin and Barrier, they feel like they are getting the most out of the dry tyre. That being said, Jardier has handled this rain like a champ. See, now that gap was 3 seconds a couple of minutes ago when I mentioned it. It is now just 1 second between Jardier and Barrier. So there are some people here who are a lot more confident at driving in the rain, especially on the dry tyre as well. But in my opinion, the track's reached damp. Every driver should be looking towards the pit lane now, and actually I think drivers who I was looking at to pit and maybe get a strategy of better, like Salvalainen, and may have missed that window to get that perfect pit stop that will pull them back into the race. But either way, Jesse, I think now is the time where most drivers should be looking into the lane and get those wet tyres on.
I'm going to disagree with you. I like a little bit of controversy. I'm going to disagree with you. Damp, again, this is the new thing. I say new thing. It's been like this for a while. You stay out until you really can't stand it. The tires that are hot, they really don't fall off a cliff until it gets properly wet. And most people argue that damp is not wet enough to come in and get off slick tires. But again, don't want to be trapped out there for any prolonged period of time, as a lot of people are coming in because imminently it is going to rain hard enough that it is going to become a very wet racetrack. And shows how much I know. Every single car that we've seen thus far is coming in fearing that the track is getting way too wet. We haven't mentioned the pit requirements today simply because of the weather situation. It's made them rather redundant. 25-second mandatory stop in the box. What you do in the box is really rather up to you, as long as you add 1 second of fuel, or 1 liter of fuel, I should argue. Of course, under normal circumstance, a 30-second pit stop is a tire stop, so additional 5 seconds gets you a set of tires. Almost everyone will want to do that here today, and I say that because count out a wild card. Daniel Durrett, by the way, has had an incident somewhere around the back half of the racetrack. They are coming in again. Oh, excuse me, that is their normal stop. They haven't stopped yet. So they're coming in with damage. Maybe they pushed it a little too far. Timo Friov in the 888 has stayed out on the racetrack and is one of the very few cars that have done exactly that. Matter of fact, he's the only car I just realized that has done that. Huge issue here, though, Tim Peck, for one of our front runners.
Stop and go 30 seconds for Harley Chamberlain. They were looking at a really good race. They were holding on to that podium position, and now that is definitely not going to be the case. Valentin Barrier holds on to first place. Jardier will be continuing second, and well, this is of course after the Ferrari at the front does fulfill that pit stop. I do think maybe pushing it a little bit too much, but hey, if they feel confident that they are getting out better lap times on the dry tyres, I'm all for extending this this stint to its absolute limits so that they can maybe maybe overcut someone in the pit lane. I'm looking at Starzak right now. They were of course one of the first ones to pit in that top 10. They're currently sitting in 7th place, Jesse, and I think realistically not a lot changed between that. However, Jonas Salvalainen did have a bigger gap on them when Starzak came into the pit. Starzak has reclosed that back up. So okay, I think realistically everyone pitted in that correct window, but maybe some of the front runners left it one lap a little too late. Could have been risky, but luckily for them, it's not been the case.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. The 300 stayed out an extra lap, and in the process of that coming in, the track went wet. That's what I said, that I would have been worried about staying out. Otherwise, you stay out as long as possible on a damp racetrack like that. But it came in an absolute hurry. It wasn't a lap too long. We'll have to figure that out. Jan Klimes also had a drive-through penalty for his pit stop, and he had to come back down pit lane. Jan Klimes did in that Porsche. Everybody else other than Harley Chamberlain also remained unscathed. Timo Friev still in the pit lane. That hands the lead back over to the Rocket Simsport driver, Valentin Berrier, who is currently being hounded by the 39 Ferrari there. Kevin Foch had a slower pit stop, 3 seconds slower, but Jardier still on the back of Berrier here.
Yeah, it looks like Jardier has set up his car more for the wet, as he was very fast. Well, he had pole position in the wet qualifying, and now he's hounding Berrier. So it looks like he was more prepared for the rain than some of the other drivers.
Excellent analysis. I would have to agree with that. For those of you wondering how the stop and go 30 works, Harley Chamberlain will have to come in at some point the next several laps to serve that. You will not be able to take that all the way to the checkered flag. It works pretty identically to how a drive-through works. You get 3 laps to serve it. But we stay with the front couple here. Berrier looks a little bit unsettled. Jardier maybe thinking about taking a look into the left-hander here into Sector 3. Thinks better of it, looking to find a better spot to make it happen. But certainly looks like Jardier has the more planted car here, Tim.
Yeah, Jardier has been undefeatable so far in the rain is a one way of putting it. They, like Kevin said, had the fastest lap in qualifying. That put them on pole position, and since the rain has started, even when it was still on the dry tyres, Jardier has just been closing that gap to Berrier ever so fast, and now hounding Berrier, trying to find this overtake. You can see though it's going to be tough to overtake in the rain. Of course, going on to start finish straight, this is what Kevin was talking about earlier. This is the real overtaking opportunity on the track. But as for the rest of the track, other than that first corner, Jesse, it's all very tight, isn't it? There's not a lot of overtaking opportunities, and especially in the wet weather, it can be quite tight. It can be quite hard to find the overtake.
Oh!
Something has happened here. What has happened? Someone is in the wall. It's Daniel Duret again having an incident that has caused damage. You can see absolutely embedded in the wall. Now facing the wrong way on the track. That is going to be a hard one to recover from, but as we watch Duret try and recover, Kevin, I actually want to go to you here. You were mentioning how Jardier looks like they've got the wet setup on right. You were also talking about earlier where the overtaking opportunities were on this track. So I want to fire this back to you, Kevin. Where are the overtaking opportunities now that it's wet? Although just before I pass you here, Orns is looking for an overtake there down the inside of turn 1, almost neck and neck with a racer slightly behind, but it's not going to matter because they have the inside advantage here. And see, slightly not there on the brakes, just going to outbrake themselves a little bit. Orns not going to be able to hit that brake marker. That's going to open the door as well for the BMW to come through, and a racer will get caught up in that. That will push them behind Orns. But going back to you, Kevin, where are the overtaking opportunities now that the rain has kicked in? Is there any overtaking opportunity other than turn 1?
Kevin's away for a moment. A couple of other things going on here. Battle for P10 very much underway. The 181, who had a pretty big crash, I would argue, in qualifying, has had a pretty decent race. Frey has done a great job getting up into a top 10 position, now fighting for a little bit more than that with the 5 there, but no position change for the moment. Meanwhile, back up front, this still going on. Berrier and Jardier, that almost rhymes there a little bit, going at it. It's super important in a case like this not to get too cute with it. Don't do too much. Jardier, of course, a hardened veteran, the same as Valentin Berrier. The interesting thing thus far is I haven't seen Berrier defend very heavily, even when Jardier was right up the back of him. It's almost as if Berrier trusts his car placement and Jardier not to make any silly moves. I think you're seeing a lot of respect and trust here.
Yeah, there's a lot of respect and trust, and that's the thing, is when it gets wet on the track, the rain comes pouring down. There's been another incident here, someone else in the wall. This is Christoph Simon sliding around the corner. They are facing the wrong way on track, but not the driver in the wall that I thought I saw. Maybe a trick on my eyes there, but oh no, Christian Bock looks like. Oh no, Christian Bock is fine. But they are currently in 24th place. We've got another race replay here. This is Gianna Grande coming around the corner. They are going to be. This is Simon on the left, who you saw had an incident and facing the wrong way, and Grande, one of the people that got caught up in that instant. But yeah, going back to what I was saying, Jesse, the rain comes in, it makes the track wet, and you have to be quite understanding with the other drivers on track. It is a lot of trust that you have to put in your opponent to not go into you, and again, you have to be very aware to not go back into them as well. So what we're seeing between Valentin Barrier and Jardier right now is a lot of trust and also a lot of working with each other here. Although they're definitely racing each other, they're both going to be pushing to be in that first place spot. They are also very aware that something could go wrong in wet weather, which I believe Kevin is back now, which is going to lead me back into asking the same question I was going to ask you before, Kevin, which is that now that the rain has set it in, do the overtaking spots, are they all gone now? Of course, turn 1 remains a good place to overtake, but as for anywhere else on the track, is there any way you can overtake in the rain that is safe to do so?
Well, first of all, I do apologise for the silence. I had a little bit of mic problems. But yeah, definitely still looks like we saw after Yasmin the first time. Turn 1 is still a very good overtaking opportunity, but as we also saw into turn 4, it's like people can lose it there very easily now that it's wet. Basically, anywhere is now an overtaking opportunity, as long as you wait for the little mistakes and then capitalize. But as we also saw before it started raining, in the third to last corner, it's also been a hunting ground for some people. So I think in the rain, it's actually opened more opportunities than in the dry.
Interesting. But yeah, basically you're saying that now that it's raining, you're waiting for those mistakes. It's a great point to make here, is that mistakes do happen. In fact, watching now, Harley Chamberlain, Jordan Daly, just ahead of them, both of them there looked a bit skittish going around those corners. Harley Chamberlain, though, trying to make up for an unfortunate accident that happened to them. They got a stop and go for 30 seconds for, I believe, speeding in the pit lane. Jordan Daly as well had to serve a penalty, a drive-through, I believe. That's put them towards the back of the pack as well. So this is just now making up for lost time, Jesse. And this goes back to what we were saying about the drop round of the championship. A lot of these drivers have already used the drop round of the championship. I believe Chamberlain's used their drop round. I may be wrong, but one person who's probably used their drop round as well is Hugo Morales. Although they've been in both races, one of them didn't go quite right. They found themselves fighting towards the back of the pack. They're still in this race as well. Maybe they're planning for a drop round in the future, but these drivers, although they've seen huge accidents at the beginning, it's just about getting as many points as possible now and hopefully climbing through the field for them. But Jesse, this is going towards you. If you're one of those drivers, you've had a big accident, you've maybe had to stop and go for 30 seconds, or you're spinning out. Ghostman there as well, having an incident in the rain. I believe this is just going to be another one of those spinning. Oh no, it seems like they've actually pulled to the side of the track and stopped the race because they've had a drive-through penalty handed to them. But yeah, Jesse, if you're one of the drivers that's had an incident in the race, what are you doing here to make up for that?
Well, first of all, not this. This is exactly what I was going to talk about. That was Harley Chamberlain and Jordan Daly. These are two drivers that had two different kind of penalties that are definitely out of position. Both these drivers, in my mind, should be fighting for, at very least, top 20, top 15 spots, and they were very close. Obviously very frustrated as well. Harley Chamberlain goes for a big old move, and it wasn't on, you have to say, and both cars go off the racetrack. Chamberlain waiting, realizing the magnitude of the mistake, lets Daly go back through, but that might be another big penalty for Harley Chamberlain. Speaking of which, we saw Gosman pull over after receiving a drive-through penalty. Kevin Boss has more with that.
Yeah, we've had another incident on lap 10, turn 2 involving cars 3492, which was a racing incident. Same involving lap 12, turn 3 between the 699 and the 34. And we've had a 5-second penalty for car 30, a collision with 699. 30 missed the corner and caused contact with the 699 and keeps the position. But a no further action between the 181 and the 5. A drive-through penalty for 240, taking out 966, position not returned, and one more racing incident between the 699 and 11 on lap 15.
Well, a lot of action going on around the racetrack. Christoph Simon also having another spin. That's the second time the 966 Lamborghini has had issues. Actually, no, that was the drive-through, rather. That was a replay we were watching of the drive-through penalty. Well spotted by cameraman Stewie, who we realized we didn't introduce at the very beginning, but you know him. He's the man behind the cameras, Stewie. He's the guy that talks to us, but doesn't talk to you. He's a little bit shy. Jardier continuing the fight out front with Barrier. Absolutely nothing lost between these two. I said earlier, a lot of respect between them, Tim. Jardier looks down to the inside, not far enough along, thinks better of it, falls back in line again. Man, it's such a close race between these two. Tim Peck, take it away.
Oh, and after Valentin Barrier goes wide on turn one there, you can see Jardier getting very deep into the corner, trying to get alongside, but Barrier will hold the inside line and just be able to navigate the corner a little bit quicker. But Jardier, as you said, Jesse, just absolutely all over the rear of the Bentley just ahead. Looks so confident in this wet weather. Well, Barnabas Faze-Kass here trying to make an overtake on Pushkarev in the BMW. You can see them towards the outside now. A bit of grip here, not going to be able to hold it together, although we'll still be on the inside of the BMW coming down into turn 5 here. Slight bit of contact between the BMW going off the track and rejoining just ahead of the Honda. Almost a collision there between the two drivers, but managing to stay away from each other. Faze-Kass just letting Karol come back onto the track there, but a big couple of battles going into turn 1. A lot of drivers going neck and neck with each other, Jesse. It looks like the rain kind of continued to keep things interesting here at the Hungaroring.
There's a lot of unsettled race cars, but I'm going to tell you something. You got to eat nails for breakfast to make a move like that. Pushkarev and Faze-Kass absolutely pulling no punches. It's a title fight in the 10th round between the two of them, and they very nearly came to tears, but somehow they just about sorted out. The rejoin might have been suspect for argument, but I'm willing... I'm not a steward, of course, but I'm willing to let that go based on the fact that it was really hard racing, and they both got away with it in the end. It doesn't come back to bite them. Speaking of, Jardier continues to make these little moves that you just think are going to go incredibly badly, but at the last second, he reins it back in and falls back in line. Tim Peck is making audible squeaking noises.
I mean, this is just so exciting. Jardier now looking towards the outside of Barrier for turn 1. The reason they're doing this is because they want to be lined up for this next corner here, where they want to hold the inside line. Unfortunately for them, just not going to be able to hold it around the outside of turn 1. That means Barrier can be ahead before they get now towards turn 2. We're going to a race replay now. This is Koderman, who is on track there, the 889. They've lost a whole bunch of positions, most likely due to an incident. I believe they had maybe a bit of unsettlement on the track. You can see the two cars fighting ahead, and that's the thing, Jesse. We're seeing so many people being a lot unsettled on the track right now. The rain is definitely making these curbs very, very dangerous, and that's something that we've not talked about yet. Is the curbs on this track, they cause a lot of problems in the dry, but in the wet, as Grande here making a move down the inside. It looks like a bit of contact between the two cars as well. I'm not sure who that was with, but contact sees one car pull over to the side of the road in that particular instance. Jesse, curbs on this track, Hungaroring, obviously very, very dangerous to begin with. You can hit a curb wrong and that will see the end of your race. Now with the wet weather, these curbs are so slippery. Something that a lot of these drivers have to look out for today.
Yeah, it's one of those racetracks where the curbs, even in the dry, are a huge problem. We saw I think it was a 300 McLaren, have the same accident in the same corner twice. You could have just as easily done that in the dry around here. It's that sort of racetrack. Some of the curbs are kind of hospitable. Some of them are very inhospitable. You've got to know what you can and cannot do. Obviously, you don't want to climb the curbs in the chicane as well. Getting it wrong coming up the hill into, 4 and 5, you don't want to do that either. It's a whole lot of different things you got to take into consideration, and then you add rain on top of that. It becomes an even sketchier proposition. You're out here dogfighting with other cars, and it can all go wrong in a flash, as it has done with Kopsov at the top of the hill. Turn 7, I believe. That Honda, who was in P10, has just had a self-induced spin, unless I'm very much mistaken. Lele has taken over the final spot inside the top.
Jardier continues the hunt on Barrier ahead. Samir Foch, who was at 1.4 seconds behind after the pit stops, of the two lead drivers, managing to slightly close that gap up to 2 seconds. Salvalainen started this race in 7th place, wants to be fighting Barrier at the front. That is their championship contender, both of them tied for the lead right now. Salvalainen, though, has managed to push themselves back up into 4th. They're 1.2 seconds off Samir, and I don't expect for a second that they will stop that fight. So I imagine they're going to continue to try and close that gap, is the Mercedes driver. But Kevin, Salvalainen here started down 7th whilst their rival started up in 3rd. They've now managed to climb up into 4th place. If you're Salvalainen here, what are you doing? If you're on their team, what are you going to tell them? Are you still pushing even though the weather is continuously getting worse and overtakes becoming more risky? Or are you going to say, okay, we're just going to try and hold on to this 4th place, don't get into too much trouble now, we'll come back with Barrier in another race?
Well, I mean, he's been going forward slowly. Oh, wait, as we get a race replay here from the team of Fayev, it's happening, going through the penultimate corner, and they have contact making, I can't see which car that is, but spinning out another car, hitting another, and getting himself into the barrier. But yeah, as Savalainen is slowly pushing himself forward, I'd say if he sees an opportunity, grab it, as he's already had to get the drop round for 0 points last week because of the disconnect. Any points he can get now is going to be bonus for later on.
Yeah, it is that thing, isn't it? Salvalainen here, although 4th place would be a great finish, it's still a decent amount of points. They're fighting for that 1st place in the championship, so they need to be getting as many points as possible here. The fight continues down the field. You can see Horchy trying to find their way up in 16th place right now, but Eraser, despite having some damage on that car, it looks like, staying strong, Jesse.
Certainly is, and that's the thing. You've got to be able to mitigate whenever things go a bit wrong. And also, we're not sure. Actually, no, we are sure. We saw the incident just a bit ago, which some of that damage. I keep flashing back to the front of the pack simply because there's absolutely nothing in it. I feel like we start every single Hungaroring race as if we're a broken record. We say that it always races well here at RCI for some reason. There's never been a boring race, dating all the way back to the first ever race we ran at Hungaroring 3 years ago at Night Owl, and it's always been interesting. Always stuff like this as well, no matter what the weather is, no matter if it's in the dark, in the daytime, it's always fantastic racing. Could this come down to the wire in 21 minutes from now? I suspect it might. We've had a few more penalties come through and a few more incidents as well. Soderman has had an absolutely abysmal part of the day. I saw the 889 off earlier. They've been able to get into some battles here as of late, start going in the right direction. But back to the penalties. Harley Chamberlain, after the contact with Daly, we expected a penalty to come out. Kevin, what do you got?
Well, it's a 15-second penalty for taking out the other car. Position was returned, but it was still a significant enough hit to get the 15 seconds. And a minor contact racing incident between the 95 and the 555, same between the 10 and the 39, as well for the 5 and the 43. But a warning for car 888 pushing 404 off track, and another racing incident involving car 181. Minor contact, and I think that pushing off track for the 404 might have given him his drive-through penalty for track limits.
Oh dear, that's unfortunate. I'm quite curious, Kevin, what you think about the 15-second penalty for the 725. We saw the replay. It just looked like couldn't get the brakes under him in the wet conditions, and obviously was apologetic. Was Harley Chamberlain waited for Daly to go back through, but 15 seconds in your eyes, was that deserved?
I think it's not the worst penalty you could. I mean, it's about as bad as you can get it for that. He did go on the inside to try and go for the overtake, fully missed this braking point. As you see Christian Bock going on the inside towards turn 1, see if he can make it stick. And it does look like he's got the inside line and able to make the overtake. It's still very close between these two, but it looks like he's got the job done. But yeah. Chamberlain went on the inside, missed his braking point. As we see Charlier go up on the inside of Barrier, and he's making it stick, taking the lead of this race. And with his pace that he's been having, I can only see him just to take off into the horizon.
Didn't see that coming, Tim Peck. He just sort of took it away from him there, maybe stunned Barrier a little bit, and not before time because Samir Foch, who has been catching this pack for a very long time now, has got all the way to the back of Valentin Barrier now for P2 as Jordan Daly for the Race Ventura team has gone off again. What's happened now? Oh,
no.
dear.
I mean, that looks to me like slightly missing the braking marker. Of course, then the steering wheel snaps back into position. You saw the car, it started to turn into the corner, but instantly threw itself the other way off the track there. And it looks like Daly just maybe missing the braking marker, got the brakes caught with the steering wheel there. It looks like Valentin Barrier there going a bit wide on the corner, opens the door slightly for Samir to try and go for the inside, but just managing to get themselves together before Samir snuck himself round the corner there. Now, the interesting thing about this battle now, Jesse, is that Jardier, first of all, that move absolutely brilliant. I took my eyes off that battle for half a second, and Jardier goes, all right, now I'm going to do the overtake, shoots down the inside of that corner, but Barrier now under pressure from Samir Foch. If Foch manages to get this position, that puts Barrier and Salvoline in a direct fight with each other, and Salvoline just 1.5 seconds behind. Hey, maybe it's a little bit of a gap to close, but let's be real, 1.5 seconds is not a lot. That can absolutely be closed up. So Salvoline here, their fight for the championship has reopened with that move from Jardier there. And Valentin Barrier, they look unsettled to me, Jesse. I'm interested to know your thoughts on this, because to me, Barrier, although they look so confident at the beginning of this race, ever since it started to rain, they've looked very, very unsettled. And it doesn't look like that Bentley has been made for the wet weather on this track.
Yeah, we talked about that at the very beginning about how there's different ways you can go about this particular race. You can think about it as a hybrid setup. You can go all in on a dry setup. You can go full wet setup, and obviously that'll impact your race depending on how it goes and how well you do in the portion that you're strongest in. Obviously, if you indeed have a strongest portion, and something is up obviously with the Bentley in this rain. Maybe they went with a more hybrid setup and it's gone completely drenched now, and there's maybe a miscalculation. That car, like you said, I couldn't have said it better myself, has looked incredibly unstable ever since it started raining, ever since the pit stop. They put those wet Pirellis on, and then it has not done them very well. I will say, in addition to that, Samir Foch is not going to wait around the way that Jardier did. Foch is going to take any opportunity that he possibly can do, as he knows he's in this championship for the long haul and the fight. Justice in the 11, we haven't talked about them at all. That Aston in front there very nearly lost it on the curbs, but able to just keep it in front of Chamberlain for the time being. Christian Bach, the GC Racing Nissan GTR as well, the fan favorite GTR, my favorite car as well, going well considering they had a lap one huge incident that set them outside the top 20. They're making their way up back to a respectable position, I would say. Christian Bach always doing the GTR proud, but I dare say it, has not had the finish this car has deserved this season. Has always found themselves on the wrong end of something.
I mean, that was an amazing move for a second there. Unfortunately, a race is going to be blocking the track for Bok, but Bok going down the inside on Horch, just that little bit later on the brakes going into turn one allows them to pick up another position to move them up in 17th place for the Nissan there, now already turning their attention to a racer ahead. It looks like Bok just has a bit of pace over both the McLaren drivers here that they're going to be able to use to their advantage. I mean, Bok has done so well in that Nissan. I actually saw someone in the chat earlier mentioned it. I believe it was Rico Wasbeer, said the Nissan is in the position it started in, and that's good considering what happened lap one, and that's a great point from Rico there. Lap one, of course, that Nissan got into a lot of trouble. Jesse saw themselves going very wide and getting caught up in all of the accidents that are happening in front of them. Bok managing to bring up into 17th place now has just looked phenomenal in the wet weather today. It's definitely one of the cars that has stood out, even though it is for that 17th place position. Okay, it's not where a lot of the viewers want to see that car. They want to see it a lot higher. However, for the car itself, I think that is a great result, and Bok should be really, really impressed with how they've done today. Foch here, under pressure from Salvoline from behind, but they're currently putting pressure on Valentin Barrier ahead. Salvoline, though, itching to get through. They just want to take the fight to their championship rival, and I don't know who's going to strike first, Jesse. It could be any of these drivers, Foch or Salvoline in here, depending on who goes for it first, but I think Foch might go for the first move, but if they mess this up, Salvador absolutely snap up that place in a second.
Well, there's two reasons why Samir Foch is not going to wait patiently like Jardier did for 25, 20 plus minutes. And the simple answer is Samir Foch is I'm going to take the opportunity. And also, he can't afford to do what Jardier did because Savo has caught the both of them from behind. And Jonas Savalainen is going to make a move here at some point as well. And you don't want to be the first one to lose out there. If Savalainen really wants to play 4D chess here, what he could really do is wait for Foch to make a move on Barrier and know that it's going to be coming at some point and rather soon, I would argue as well. Just wait for them to make a move and then slip by. We've seen that happen a couple of times in this race as well. That's 4D chess, and I'm only smart enough to play checkers though.
I mean, that is absolutely what Salvador is doing. I think they're just waiting for Foch to make the move because, I mean, we've seen it already, with especially the Jardier and Barrier battle for the lead when it was still going on is a perfect example of that. In that Jardier obviously had no pressure from behind, so they could go for all of those moves that they saw. They could try and line up everything, but let's switch this up a bit. If we put Samir Foch, if they were already in that battle when Jardier was doing that, then Jardier would have just been swallowed up in an instant, because if you've got a car putting pressure on you from behind, you can't be that aggressive, because the second it goes wrong, if you maybe don't make the corner, if you can't make the overtake happen, it just opens the door so much for the car behind. Here's Horch trying to get their position back on Bock. Here you can see them looking towards the inside of the corner, but Nissan just managing to keep it together through the corners. Hang on a second, their racer was in this battle a minute ago, and Horch has just made contact with Bock there. That is going to spin the Nissan around. Horch will wait for the Nissan to recover here. We're going to have a race replay to see exactly what happened here. Looks like contact though, just on the inside of the corner. I'm not sure whether Horch maybe missed the braking point there, or whether Bock closed the door a little too much on the McLaren behind. That will be down to the stewards to evaluate that incident, but unfortunately for the Nissan that was just climbing their way back up through the field, that is going to be a bit of a setback as we come into the final parts of the race here. But Samir Foch, Kevin, they are looking for a move on Valentin Barrier here, based off the knowledge that Valentin is struggling a little bit for the last 20 minutes of the rain. Samir Foch, they can just wait this one out, and a podium finish, it's a podium finish, but if you're in the Ferrari, if you're sitting in that third place, I'm guessing you're going to agree with me here, but you might not. I'm interested to know. You're just waiting for a mistake, right? You're not going to force anything because it's just too risky with Salve lining behind.
Oh, definitely. If you try and go for the lunge and you make a mistake, your own position's going to be swallowed up by the car behind, with them being that close behind. So all you can do is just wait for that perfect opportunity to pounce and not go for anything 50-50, because that will bring the Savalainen into the fight and into that position most likely.
And that's the thing, is these drivers are the best of the best here at RCI. They understand that they can't just go for those reckless moves. So even though Samir Foch, a driver who I'd say is not reckless, that's not what I'm going with this. I'd say there's a driver who's very aggressive in the car, knows how to make those overtakes happen, and will always be pressure and overtake here. They also know that they've got to refrain from it for a little bit now, because even though Valentin Barrier is significantly slower than them in average lap time, you can't make a risky move at this stage in the race. We're going into the final 10 minutes now, Jesse, and Harley Chamberlain has climbed back up through the field, finds himself in 18th place, but trying to make up for that 15-second penalty that they found themselves getting earlier during the pits.
Well, not only that, of course, the penalty that they had to serve speeding in the pit lane as well, that stop and go that put them in this position in the first place. It's been a horrible race. You will beg your pardon for the pun, but when it rains, it pours, and it certainly has done here, though admittedly in the last 10 minutes it has sort of let up a little bit, relented, and it will continue to do so until the end of the race. It's not going to stop raining. In fact, it'll continue to trickle through, but less hectic than it was about 20 minutes ago. Continue to improve to the checkered flag. Conditions getting better, the grip maybe a little bit better, some of the awkward planing a little bit less as well. The visibility will obviously be improved even in spray of another car, but this is the big battle that we're looking at and waiting for the finish of, and who knows what configuration they will cross the line for the final time with. No, I do know. I want to know what Kevin thinks.
Oh, it's going to be very difficult. As I just said, it's like, especially Foch, he doesn't want to do too much, try and go for every little gap. and then bring Savalainen fully into that fight. It's probably going to be waiting for Barrier to make this slightest mistake, just the way that Jardier got past him. Just wait for that one little moment of lapse in concentration, and then pounce. But yeah, this is going to be very tight. It's going to be very difficult to call.
Yeah, I think it is. By the way, when the McLaren and the Nissan GTR had contact in the penultimate corner, you heard something very rare. I've only ever been a part of a casting crew where it's happened a couple of times. You heard the triple sigh from the commentators in the booth. Both Kevin, myself, and Tim all reacted negatively. Oh, and here we go again. It's deja vu. Take two. Again, contact a second time. Maybe a little bit of tempers flaring as well, as Christian Bach may have had enough of McLaren's. And continuing contact here. I think exactly Christian Bach has had enough today and has been a little frustrated, and that's going to be further contact for that particular McLaren, who was sent off and into the wall there a little bit. An unfavorable couple of laps. Porsche trying to just exist there on the curbs, but the wetness there sending them into the wall. All coming apart here in the final 10.
I don't think Bach wants to see another McLaren after today's race. There's certainly been a lot of chaos between the three cars, the two McLarens there obviously, and the Nissan. So all of that's actually helped Harley Chamberlain though climb back up through the field. Unfortunately, that 15-second penalty is going to take them right back down to the bottom again. So at this point for Chamberlain, this is just a case of continue to push on the track, hope that you can get a position, but realistically it's more just practice at the end of the day, and maybe some bragging rights for Chamberlain to see if they can do it. Well, here's Bach on your screen yet again. There is a McLaren in front of Bach yet again. This time it is a race, and already looking towards the inside. Bach tries to go for a move there, sends it a little bit later on the brakes, but the McLaren just holds it together. Horchy behind tries to capitalise off that as well, but can't find a way through. The Nissan there either. I mean, it's just such a big car. It almost becomes a roadblock, especially in this track where you can just park it in the middle of the corner there. But you can see the same situation as you have basically for the second place fight here. This time it's happening for 20th between two McLarens, and their box going off the track for a drive-through penalty. Horchy comes through, picking up a drive-through penalty as well, but they're going to swap position there, almost look like, and Horchy now, they've been looking quite skittish almost as well. We've said this about a lot of the cars, but I think Horchy, Racer, and even Bach, they've all looked quite skittish on the track, but I mean, they both picked up drive penalties for track limits there, and it's the risk of raining at Hungaroring, Jesse, especially on the corner we just saw. If you go a little bit wide onto the curbs, you're most likely going to pick up a warning and 3 warnings and then one more offence, and that's your drive-through penalty.
Yeah, it's getting down to the race. You've used at least one of them up to this point, going a bit wide because of the weather conditions, and maybe you were battling somebody and you tried to extend the track limits a little bit, and it's all coming to a head here. It's getting a bit frustrating. You also sort of run to the end of your patience here a little bit too in this situation where you maybe you're trying something you hadn't before. You're entering the corners a little bit differently, and it all just sort of comes to a head. You lose a little bit of your judgment, get those kind of penalties, confirming that all those were drive-through penalties for track limits. But Kevin Boss has more from the steward's box, some things that aren't for track limit.
There's one more racing incident between the 43 and the 114. That's of course Bach and Horchy. Then a warning for car 39, avoidable contact with car number 10 on lap 22. Also in lap 22, minor contact between the 114 and 43, the 11 and 75, the 114 and 43 again. Couple turns later, once again the 114 and the 43. Then on lap 25, turn 13, we have a 15-second penalty for car 43. 43 takes out the 114, returns to position. And then there's another minor contact racing incident between the 888 and the 725.
Well, we've been cautioned in chat by longtime viewer and driver Michael Redford to not talk about patience. He's about to have an aneurysm. We won't talk about patience. You know what? Just for you, Michael, I'm going to say the absolute opposite of that. Now's the time to panic. You got to get it. It's the last 4 minutes of the race. I would like everyone to respect each other on the racetrack, but racing drivers, etc., and so forth, that's not going to happen. You're going to see a couple of moves here made, I would think, at least, Tim, the last couple of months.
I mean, we said it at the beginning of this race, Jesse. Hungaroring always brings some great action at RCI, and one of the things that it usually brings is a photo finish, and that's what we're lining up for now. The race for second place. Valentin Barre currently leads Smith, Foch, and Salvalainen, who's in that fourth place position. Of course, it's worth noting that Barre and Salvalainen are currently tied for the lead in the championship on 72 points. They've both had Grand Slam weekends where they've come first place in qualifying. They then had the fastest lap and they have won the race, but now it's going to be the time that they are going to get broken up here today. And at the moment, Valentin Barre is going to be the one to come out on top and take the lead in the championship. But what can Salvalainen do in the last 3 minutes of this race to change that? I mean, Kevin, we've talked already about what Salvalainen has to do, and they just got to wait for Samir Foch to make the move and then try and capitalise off it. But if that doesn't happen, is there anything Salvalainen can do now, or are they just going to have to settle for fourth if nothing happens ahead of them?
It's most likely he's going to have to settle for fourth, but what he can do is try and get that tiny little bit more closely to Foch and try and force a mistake out of it. That's basically all I can see him do, even though he then takes a bit too much of the curb going through the chicane there, losing that precious little bit of time that he actually needs to put more pressure on Foch.
I agree, and that actually... Me and Kevin, Jesse, we have raced on this track before. Now, not me and Kevin in particular in this race, but during the race that we were racing each other in, the two leaders of this race had a very similar situation to Barrier and Salvalainen here, where it just came down to the fact that one of them had to wait behind and hope that something happened to the car ahead, because when it's raining like this, it's very, very risky. So this is a bit of a familiar situation for us, Jesse, and based off what Kevin has just said about maybe Salvalainen has to settle for fourth here, would you agree? Would you say that Salvalainen does have to settle for fourth if nothing happens up ahead?
Well, he doesn't have to. He could always send it, you know, and shake his luck there, but I don't think he will do that. I think you're absolutely spot on. I think what he'll do, knowing that there isn't that much in it between all of them, as something happens between Barry and Foch, I think he'll take fourth here. He'll accept that as an excellent recovery after an incredibly devastating exit from last week's race, and he'll move on to round number 4 in 1 week's time. I think that is the smart way to do it. If it was me in the car, who has a not so cool head, I'd probably try to sneak a cheeky one in there at the last possible moment, but I don't think Savalainen's going to do that. All credit to Stasic, by the way, as well. That 67 Honda up into P5 very quietly inside the top 5 today. Scarmato coming through the survey drive-through penalty of his own. Timo Friev in the 888, who briefly led this race early if you weren't with us. Hard to believe that, as they've had their incidents after that. They spun in the penultimate corner all by themselves, and now have fought their way back inside the top 20. They're going to go off into the grass here. They're going to go straight on. There's no way they're going to make it, and huge contact made right there with the McLaren of John Araser. The fight for P20 has gone completely wrong here between the two of them, and Timo Friev is going to take that spot now. I don't know if that technically counts as giving it back. Clearly off into the grass, no braking ability whatsoever, came back onto the track and collected John Araser. That was a scary moment between the two of them that led to that contact.
I mean, we've got the race replay here. You can see that the Ferrari goes off the track there, picks up the grass, and although they do let a racer back on the track first, to me, I think a racer should have continued into the chicane ahead as well. Though I think maybe the 888 jumped the gun slightly, but coming over now to finish race, Jardy Air wins the Hungaroring race here today. Valentin Barre will come home in second, and Foch in third place rounds out that podium. Judah Salvalainen comes in fourth place. They cross the line, and Stars back behind is in fifth. Fazekas finishes in that sixth place. But just before we mention the rest of the people finishing this race, Jesse, something I'm going to bring up actually after the race as well. But would you believe me if I told you that Starzak in this championship has only ever finished 17th in race 1, didn't do race 2, and has now come home today to come 5th place today after brilliant qualifying as well. I mean, that has got to be one of their best drives they've had so far.
Well, Stasic is a great driver and has shown at different points here at RCI that he has it in him, but just a fantastic finish, a deserved finish in the 67 Honda top 5. That'll go a long way to his final points position. This certainly will not be his drop round at all. Can he continue the momentum? He's shown that he can. It's all about putting a full race together like he's done today in incredibly tricky conditions. You know, I was looking at the top 10, everybody inside there. This is just absolutely deserved by everybody who came home top 10 today. Just drove a fantastic race for the most part, kept it incredibly tidy. You look behind them though, and you start to notice those little red numbers crop up. It's obvious those that have struggled a bit here today. Hugo Merrill's, by the way, very disappointing finish outside the top 20. The final results on your screen: Jardier wins it over Valentin Berrier, who has the magenta number 2, meaning they set the quickest lap of the race. That, of course, in the dry, obviously. Samir Foss drove all the way inside the podium positions and will get a deserved third place. Savalainen in fourth will take that as an acceptable recovery. Stasic maybe having a career day. Facekiss also doing well here. Pushkarev doing well. Soldatov, Free, and Lele, your top 10. Kopsov just outside the top 10 here today. What a crazy race. Kevin Boss, going down to you. Takeaways from this wet and wild Hungaroring.
Well, some very close and good racing at the front, combined with some chaotic racing at the back. People losing it, slamming into the corner, slamming into other drivers because they missed their braking points or just have a misjudgment, or as we saw just now, going into the grass and then taking out the other car. It's been a mixed bag of everything. Made it very interesting as well. Yeah, all in all, I'd say a very good race.
Right there at the end, too, by the way, Stewards gave a drive-through penalty for car 888 for taking out the 699. As Ryan Gill would say, that's pretty slam dunk. I don't think anyone here expected anything else other than a drive-through penalty for that. Tim Peck is wet and wild. Hungaroring delivered again. Chaos in the midfield, but an excellent fight for top 3 positions. We're a bit spoiled here, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just been one of those phenomenal races. And I think a lot of people at the beginning watched Valentin Barrier pull away and just thought, okay, this is going to be another Valentin Barrier show after last week. But as soon as the race started, Jardier just came pounding back up the field. Brilliant overtake as well to put himself up into first. And I've got to say, an absolutely brilliant win for Jardier there. That's going to pull them into the title fight here in this championship. And of course, Barrier now will be ahead of Savalainen after they were tied at the beginning today. They're no longer tied now, but Barrier coming second, Savalainen managing to get up into that 4th place. That is going to keep them close together. I think we're going to have a really tight championship going forward. And with 5 more races left in the season, Jesse, it's only going to get more exciting. But Hungaroring, again, it delivers for me. It always delivers at RCI, and Hungaroring has delivered yet again today. We've had some absolutely brilliant racing, and the rain has just brought so much chaos as well. It's definitely been an entertaining race today.
Well, Hungaroring delivers, and it delivered a deserving winner. Kids, if you're learning how to sim race, if you're new to it, you're not quite a pro yet, take note of what Jardier did today. Very patient, 20, 30 minutes. Stayed behind Barrier, went to school, figured out where he could make a move, where he might be faster, took a couple of shots. One of them finally stuck, and it was clean. Had to shut the door on Barrier, but it was a very clean move. Surgical precision by Jardier here, and a deserving winner. Also, talk about Barrier for a second. Did not give up any more positions, kept a nice podium streak intact today. Of course, the next broadcast here on the Friday Championship will be at Paul Ricard in France in 1 week's time. I know everyone that's still watching let out a collective groan when they heard that, but don't worry, it is going to be an interesting race, that I can assure you. This entire season has been incredible. No reason for it to stop at the halfway point in the season. A big thank you to our partners as well that make this race and every race possible. AK Informatica for providing our server solutions. Driver 61, you can get 25% off your driver coaching by going to driver61.com and using our discount code in the description of this video. Driver coaching can make you a better sim racing driver. Worked for a lot of us here in the admin team at RCI. I can assure you that. Their coaching is fantastic. Lovely bunch of folks they have over there. Driver61.com. And of course, fanatec.com. Use our affiliate link when making purchases of Fanatec hardware at fanatec.com. Doesn't cost you a single penny. It just tells them that we sent you. It helps us with things like server costs when you use the link and make a purchase. Thank you very much for continuing to use the affiliate link. Kevin Boss, final thoughts on today and what you've seen.
Well, like I said before, it was all in all a pretty good race. It offered everything that every race fan wants to see: good racing, accidents, good fights all round. Yeah, pretty solid race. Good follow-up to what we saw at Silverstone and Imola.
Couldn't agree more. By the way, of course, a night out season race tomorrow night, live here broadcasted on RCI TV, and then on Thursday, the GT4 and Porsche Cup mixed class race. And of course, we'll see you here next Friday as well. And don't forget, you don't have to be a spectator. You can sign up and race with us, even join mid-season by going to racerci.com, signing up, doing your pre-queue the week of the race, jump into season already underway. Or if you want to start fresh, the Ginetta Cup season, it's going to be an all-timer when that starts. One of the most crazy series we ever did was the Ginetta Cup. It's back again on Monday. That starts in a couple of weeks. Time to get your pre-quali done. Get yourself into a split, no matter what your skill level is. We have a split for you. We'd love to see you in the Ginetta Cup starting in just about a week and a half's time. Tim Peck, final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it already, Jesse. It's been an absolutely phenomenal race. Of course, next week we're going to Paul Ricard over in France to do the final race in the first half of this championship, and then we'll be seeing how all the drivers line up with each other after that race. But I've got to say, I'm really excited to see how France goes down. But coming back to today's race, I mean, Hungaroring always delivers, and it delivers again today. I've just been watching in the background a couple of these overtakes that have been happening in the highlights, and I've got to say, Salvalainen, so smooth through some of those corners. You can see just the comfort they have on this track. They really knew where they could push the limit, and I think going into next week, this championship fight is only going to get more interesting.
Well, it was a mixed race that started off dry but ended wet, won by Jardier after a brilliant move. Left us all gasping just a little bit, able to go on and win, but it's Valentin Berrier who will escape with the championship points lead after today. What will happen as we go to Paul Ricard next week? The only way to find out is to be there. 1 week's time, set the notification. We'll be live here on RCI TV. Big thank you to all of you watching at home. We appreciate it. Thank you for being with us. We're trying to get to 4,200 subs on YouTube. We just need just a couple. It's like 10 or 12 to get to there. We appreciate you subscribing, liking the video. And until next time, have a good night.